Today, we're really digging into this major shakeup in U.S. supply chains.
Yeah, it's all about those recent tariff hikes, especially the ones hitting goods from China. So our mission today is to pull out the key insights. How are businesses actually changing their logistics game in response?
Welcome to Logistics Pulse, sponsored by Mothership. Skip the broker to save big on LTL shipments, or deliver same day nationwide. For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe to Logistics Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
First, changes right at the source, where the goods actually come from.
Makes sense. Start at the beginning.
Second, how those goods are transported, the en route part, getting them from there to here.
Okay.
And third, what happens upon arrival, warehousing, storage, which is becoming much more strategic than it used to be.
Got it. Source, transport, arrival. Let's start at the source then. What is the initial reaction?
Well, it points back to March. When those tariffs were looming, U.S. companies basically went into overdrive.
The front loading, trying to beat the clock.
Exactly. They imported a ton of stuff from China before the higher costs kicked in. Just get it in under the wire.
Aaron Peck, he's the CEO of Mothership. He talked about this on KCBS Radio.
If you have a warehouse filled with goods right now and the tariffs are in place, but you need to essentially move those goods to get ready for summer peak, and the goods that are going to come in around that time, which seasonally might be completely different, then you have no choice but to move what you have in the warehouses right now. China manufacturers are already operating on a very, very thin margin. And that comes from them. If you've been to China, you'd understand that they're, anyone that's been there knows that they're highly competitive with one another. And so that drives margins down to a super thin level to begin with.
Yeah, Peck explained how that big March surge actually led to a bit of a slowdown in Q2.
Stands to reason. Everyone's stocked up.
Right. But things didn't just stop. Freight is still moving now, but the reasons and the pressures, they've shifted.
How so?
Peck made a good point. Chinese manufacturers, often operating on really thin margins, it's super competitive over there.
So they can't just absorb huge cost increases easily?
Not easily, no. Plus, you've still got demand for certain things. Seasonal goods, think furniture for the patio, summer clothes. Retailers need that stuff now for the upcoming season.
Right. Summer collections.
Yeah.
People aren't going to wait.
Exactly. So that keeps some freight moving, tariffs or no tariffs, which creates this central tension for the shippers.
What's the tension?
It's basically, do we eat the tariff cost, try to pass it on to consumers, or maybe delay the shipment? But delaying risks missing the sales window.
Tricky spot. So what are most doing?
Seems like many are choosing to keep the goods moving, but they're scrutinizing every single step, trying to optimize, shave costs wherever possible to offset those tariffs.
Okay, that makes sense. Intense focus on efficiency, even if the motive is cost avoidance.
Which leads us nicely into that second phase, how goods are actually moving en route.
Right. If the direct route is more expensive.
Companies start looking for alternatives, and CNBC says that's exactly what's happening, a real trend towards finding ways around or at least delaying the U.S. tariffs.
So less direct shipping. What kind of alternatives are we talking about?
Well, there's growing interest in rerouting cargo through Canada and Mexico, our neighbors.
Interesting. How does that help?
It often involves using free trade zones, or FTZs, and bonded warehouses in those countries.
Okay, explain FTZs and bonded warehouses a bit. How does that work practically?
Sure. So imagine a shipment, say, electronics from China. Instead of sailing straight to LA, maybe it goes to a bonded warehouse in Vancouver or Monterrey down in Mexico.
And bonded. It's basically a secure area where goods can be stored before clearing customs and paying duties. So the shipment sits there, maybe for a while?
So the tariff clock hasn't started ticking yet.
Exactly. Then, when the time is right, maybe demand picks up or they want to manage cash flow, they can bring it across the U.S. border via truck or rail. That's when the duties typically become payable.
Clever. Delaying the hit. The report also mentioned tariff engineering. Sounds fancy.
It does, yeah. It's basically about making sometimes quite minor changes to the product while it's in that intermediate stage, like in Mexico or Canada.
Like light assembly, or even just repackaging. The goal is potentially to change the product's classification or, crucially, its country of origin for customs purposes.
To qualify for a lower tariff rate.
That's the idea. If you can legally change the origin away from, say, China, you might avoid the highest tariffs. It's complex legally, but companies are exploring it.
Wow. So these alternative routes, they add steps, maybe some cost, but the payoff is flexibility.
Definitely. The report highlights key advantages. You can better match inventory to actual demand rather than just bringing everything in at once.
Less guesswork.
Right. There's also the element of maybe waiting to see if the political winds shift, if tariffs change again. And fundamentally, it helps protect profit margins while they maybe look for alternative suppliers long term.
Okay, so we've got changes at the source, smarter routing. What about phase 3, arrival in the U.S.? You said warehousing is becoming more strategic.
Hugely strategic. This
Yeah.
is where maybe the biggest shifts are happening right now. Onshore warehousing.
Because of the tariffs.
Absolutely. The tariffs put serious pressure on cash flow. Paying a hefty duty the moment goods land. That's tough. So there's been a massive surge in using those foreign trade zones, FTZs, within the U.S. and similar bonded facilities.
Right, FTZs again. Remind us of the main benefit there inside the U.S.
The big one is indefinite storage without paying duties. Goods can sit in an FTZ technically outside U.S. commerce, duty-free, until the company decides to formally enter them into the market.
And if they don't sell them in the U.S.?
They can re-export them, again, without paying U.S. tariffs. It gives tremendous flexibility. It's not just storage. It's a cash flow tool and option strategy.
And demand for these zones is up.
Way up. Demand has doubled or even quadrupled since the tariffs first hit hard back in Q1. It's across industries, too. Consumer electronics, cosmetics, you name it.
So companies are bringing goods close, but keeping them in this sort of tariff limbo.
Pretty much. They're staging inventory near key markets. The report mentions LA, Dallas, New Jersey ready to go, but holding off on the tariff payment until they have a confirmed sale or need the stock. Lets them monitor tariff levels, too.
Makes sense. Is this mainly big companies?
Well, it's especially valuable for startups and mid-market brands. They might not have the deep pockets of the multinationals, so that flexibility an FTZ offers is crucial for them.
But the big players are using them more too.
Oh, yeah. Multinationals are definitely expanding their FTZ footprint, but for them, it's also becoming part of a broader hedging strategy.
Hedging against what? More than just U.S. China tariffs.
Exactly. They're looking at potential future global friction, maybe potential EU tariffs down the line, or currency controls somewhere else. Using FTZs provides a buffer against all sorts of potential global trade uncertainties.
So FTZs aren't just warehouses. They're tax strategy, timing strategy, even geopolitical forecasting tools rolled into one.
You got it. Companies can use them to adjust when they pay duties based on sales, or if goods need reprocessing, or even based on their read of future trade policy. It's really sophisticated stuff.
This all paints a picture of, well, a pretty fundamental shift in thinking, doesn't it? Moving from one priority to another.
Yeah, that's a key insight. Think back to the early 2020s, the pandemic chaos. The buzzword then was resilience. Build supply chains that could withstand shocks. But now, the focus has pivoted. The new priority is agility, the ability to react, adapt, change course quickly. That's valued sometimes even more than pure rock-bottom cost efficiency. It's a big mindset change from before the tariffs. At the origin, old thinking was ship when the container's full for efficiency. New thinking, ship when necessary, even if the load isn't perfect.
Do what you need when you need it.
Exactly. Then en route, old way was go direct. Simple, new way. Reroute via neutral or adjacent zones. Canada, Mexico, FTZs. Be flexible.
More complex, but more options.
And on arrival.
Yeah.
Used to be store as needed. Pretty basic warehousing. Now, it's stored to defer duties, maybe reprocess, maybe re-export. Warehousing as a strategic weapon.
It really drives home that Aaron Peck quote again, doesn't it? That companies are compelled to move freight under pressure. They're adapting on the fly.
Absolutely. They have to. Which brings us to a kind of sobering conclusion from the data.
What's that?
These changes, this volatility, it doesn't look temporary. It strongly suggests this is becoming the new normal for international trade.
So what does this new normal look like, summarized?
Well, one, freight keeps moving, but probably with squeezed profit margins for many. Two, warehousing isn't just storage anymore, it's a strategic function, deeply integrated. Three, those foreign trade zones, they've gone from being kind of obscure tools for specific situations to being pretty essential pieces of the puzzle for lots of companies. It's not, if companies will adapt, they clearly are, we see it everywhere. The real question is, how many of these simultaneous adaptations can they actually afford to manage at the same time? There's a cost to all this agility.
So for you listening, the key things to take away, U.S. supply chains are changing fast because of these tariffs. Big time.
Major shifts in how goods are shipped, where they go, and especially how they're stored using things like FTZs.
And that idea of agility, Being nimble, that's king right now. Maybe even more than just being the most efficient.
Absolutely. And the role of FTZs has just exploded in importance. It's central to strategy now.
Which leaves us with something to chew on. How does all this maneuvering, all these complex global trade adaptations, how might that eventually ripple down to affect the stuff we buy every day? The availability, the price?
Yeah, definitely something worth thinking about.
For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe to Logistics Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.